Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We are here today with Ella Sylvia, who is a sales engineer for Huntress. Good morning or good afternoon. I didn't ask, where are you from, Ella?
Good afternoon. That's where I am. I'm in Northern Virginia, but thank you for
Okay.
having me today, Scott.
Awesome, awesome. Northern Virginia. Okay, well, I'm not too far down from you. I'm in South Carolina, a little bit below, but how's the weather today in Northern Virginia?
It's okay. It's like high 50s. I'd prefer it to be warmer. Yesterday it was in the 30s, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 70s. So that's what you get with Northern Virginia weather.
Well, in all honesty, it doesn't sound too much different from where we are in South Carolina. It's 58 today, high 50s,
Yeah.
but I think tomorrow it's supposed to get maybe in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm ready for the new season. How about you?
Me too. Yeah, my husband and I are moving to Atlanta this summer.
Okay.
So we're excited to be somewhere a little warmer. We both went to college in North Carolina, so
Okay.
we like the South, we like the warmth.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm kind of fond of the South too, so good deal. Well, Ella, I understand that you're here today to talk to us about Huntress. Tell us a little bit about the platform. And for the members that haven't heard of Huntress yet, kind of give us maybe a demo.
Yeah, absolutely. So, going to be taking some time today to talk about Huntress, what we are as a managed endpoint detection and response tool.
Okay.
So, we're pulling in information from the endpoints regarding the processes that are executing. We're also looking at things like auto run, so stuff that starts up when a computer starts up, so registry run keys, WMI, those kinds of things. And then we're using that information uh, and our detection rules that have been created by our detection engineers. And all of that is being fed into our 24/7 threat ops team. And what they're going to do is if there is suspicious activity, they're going to investigate it and then only send you over an incident report, and that's the deliverable, if we find something malicious. So cutting down that noise, taking that
Okay.
lift off of the individuals.
So you only get notified unless you don't get a notification that says, "Hey, everything's good today." You only
Nope,
get notified if there is a problem that needs your attention.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And we integrate via email and via ticketing systems. So feed
Okay.
right into the typical workflow.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, is Huntress only working with MSPs, or what other kind of clients does
Yeah.
Huntress have other than MSPs?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we have historically worked with MSPs, but we also work really well with small and medium-sized businesses that
Okay.
have their own IT teams. And then with that, if you're just starting your security stack on the
Mhm.
kind of mid-market side as well, we're a great option because of that management piece of things. And we try to stay at a really affordable price point, especially when you compare to other tools that are fully managed or a 24/7 SOC.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you. I don't know
Yeah.
of another vendor in the IT channel that's doing, the things that Huntress is doing right now. So I don't really know that you have a whole lot of competition. I know that we have other managed SOC providers, but as far as the way that Huntress is delivering that to its clients, I don't know that there's another vendor that's doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, huge differentiator is going to be that management. So our threat ops team is absolutely top notch, working 24/7, and we use a follow the sun model. So we've got individuals in the US and then in the UK and Australia who are working normal hours, their time zone. So not up all night chugging Red Bulls, kind of at the top of their games.
I got you. So I guess the point to that is someone is always working at Huntress to protect the clients that you're protecting.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we see is attacks will happen at 3 a.m., not necessarily 3 p.m. And so having that gives kind of that peace of mind that I'm sure everyone could use at night.
I gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we all like to get our rest at night, that's for sure. So I want to ask you a quick question. I'm going to kind of
Yeah,
go off
please.
the track a little bit here. What made you want to get a job at Huntress? What was it about Huntress that really struck your fancy and you were just like, I really like this job? What's
Yeah.
your favorite thing about the job?
So I used to work at another vendor in
Mhm.
a similar space, more on the network detection and response side.
Okay.
And what pulled me to Huntress specifically was the fact that they're really involved in the community and on the educational side of things as well. Um, Even speaking super recently, so the CVE regarding my Microsoft Outlook from just about last week, our team is always posting whatever information that we have been able to dig into and the research that we're performing. We're
Excellent.
posting that on our blog, on Reddit, and wanting to give that information not just to our partners, but to people who aren't our partners as well, because that information is something that's going to help everyone. So education and being a part of the community is something super important to Huntress, which is just not something that you can always find in this space.
Absolutely. Well, those are all good reasons, definitely. So, what can we learn today about Huntress? Do you want to do some screen sharing and kind of get us started with that?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So today I'm going to be talking about endpoint detection and response, managed endpoint detection and response, and then how Huntress kind of fits into that space.
Okay.
So going to be talking about, the difference between EDR and a traditional antivirus and next-gen antivirus, and then, whether a managed solution makes sense for your organization.
Okay.
Awesome. So, going to kick things off by just discussing what EDR is to have that frame of reference for us as before we actually dig into the specifics of what Huntress does.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of be using the NIST cybersecurity framework. I really like it because it is pretty simple in its layout. So a good place to start evaluating building a high quality security stack is to use a framework like NIST. So we've got identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So I'm going to talk about, kind of the questions that each of these answer. But first, just to give a frame of reference of, what would kind of fall underneath each of these categories. Under identify is going to be things like asset management, it's going to be things like compliance. Under protect, it's going to be your antivirus, next-gen antivirus, MFA, user training, your firewall, and application whitelisting. Detect and respond oftentimes go kind of hand in hand. So under detection, it's going to be SIM, SOAR, honeypots, IDS, network behavioral analysis. Under respond, it's going to be a SOAR, incident response, forensic analysis, and then recovery is going to be data replication and backups.
Okay.
So to kind of go over what question you're answering. So with the identification pillar, it's what do we have as an organization and who has access to it? So understanding the environment and who's part of the environment so that you can then remove attack vectors. So what happens when somebody gets offboarded? What happens to their credentials and their access? So this is where an idea like least privileged access would kind of come up so that we can make that attack vector as small as possible.
Okay.
Under protection, how do we stop them, the bad guys, the threat actors, from coming in? So information gets inspected when it attempts to move from external sources to internal sources, and essentially keeping bad things out. So things like phishing emails, bad websites, unauthorized access. And then detection is how do we find them, the bad things. So with protection, nothing's a silver bullet. things are going to get through. And we know that to be the case because there's always something new.
Yeah, there is no silver bullet.
Exactly. Exactly. So how do we detect those things that get past our protective layers? So what logs are we reviewing? Suspicious things are happening and triggering an alert. Who's looking at them? Who's investigating them? And then the response goes hand in hand with that. How do we kick those bad actors out and then plug any holes? So actions to take in the event that we found some indicators of compromise, and hopefully we found the initial attack vector as well, so that we can plug those holes and patch or mitigate the incident, and then initiate the incident response plan as well.
Very nice.
Yeah, and that kind of goes with the recovery of that's the plugging those holes and getting things back to normal.
Very nice.
So where does EDR fit into that? EDR is an endpoint security solution that detects, investigates, and responds to cyber threats. So if that sounds pretty vague, it's because it is. So at Huntress, we've listed out these primary functions of EDR to be monitoring and collecting endpoint data. So continuously monitoring and collecting that data, including network and user activity, system events, file changes, and actively monitoring those processes across all the endpoints within your organization.
Okay.
And then taking that info and assembling it for analysis. So assembling it into a centralized repository to make it easier for teams to analyze the data and identify potential threats. And then comes the analysis. So most EDR tools are using advanced analytics and leveraging some kind of machine learning to analyze that endpoint data, find anomalies and suspicious behavior that could potentially indicate a security threat. From there, the EDR will alert on the findings. So if it's been determined to be a threat, it will provide actionable intelligence that can be used to respond quickly. And then offering some kind of remediation assistance. So giving teams the ability to isolate endpoints, contain the threat, and remediate the issue.
Okay.
So with EDR, your team can detect and respond to threats quickly, reducing the risk of a major security breach. So EDRs reduce cyber risk, which is a big reason why more and more cyber insurance is requiring some kind of EDR.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah. And kind of moving back to NIST, now we can see a little bit better where EDR will fall there. So on that detect and respond, to the right of boom in this situation. So most organizations put the majority of their budgets into the identify, protect, and recover categories. But when a compromise happens, threat actors get into your systems and often remain undetected after passing your protective tools. And so that's exactly where EDR would come into play. So detecting the threats that have bypassed prevention and response and responding to them.
Let me stop you real quick.
Yeah,
what
please.
does NGAV stand for?
Yep, that's going to be your next gen antivirus.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah,
traditional AV.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
So as you move to the right on something like this, it requires more and more expertise from people to actually assist. So it's really hard for organizations to afford tools, let alone people to manage and maintain them. So that is a huge challenge. And to talk a little bit more about what exactly is the difference between antivirus and EDR, antivirus is a preventative tool. It's stopping confirmed behavior, malicious behavior, and removing malware from your endpoint. So looking at known bad activity and known bad indicators of compromise. For EDR, it's looking at that continuous visibility on your endpoints so that you can detect and respond to unknown or suspicious threats. So next-gen antivirus primarily relies on signature-based and behavioral detection to identify and block known threats, while EDR is giving advanced threat detection and response capabilities and detecting potential threats in real time. Awesome. Now to talk just a little bit more about the history of the antivirus EDR space. So while these tools serve a similar purpose in protecting endpoints from cyber threats, there are really big differences. So antivirus solutions are the most basic type of endpoint security solution, scanning files for known threats, comparing them to a database of known malware signatures. So they're really only effective against known threats and may not detect new or advanced threats, which is why we then saw the next-gen antivirus, which I think just about every antivirus nowadays is considered to be next-gen.
Just buzzwords, right?
Yeah, exactly. The alphabet soup of the industry, definitely. But those next-gen antivirus are using some of those advanced technologies like some behavioral analysis, machine learning, talk about another buzzword, and AI to detect and block known and some unknown threats. They're more effective than the traditional antivirus, but they still have limitations in detecting and responding to advanced threats. So most traditional AV providers realized more stuff was making it by those detection engines, so they started to adopt these next-gen AV capabilities. So most vendors nowadays fall into this category.
Okay.
So these two are under that protect category of NIST.
Okay.
But even with all those bells and whistles, the market realized that while these tools prevent a lot of threats from getting in, they weren't bulletproof because nothing is.
Sure.
So machine learning and AI engines are really only as good as the models that they've been trained on. And we aren't quite at that stage where AI has become self-aware. So these were built by humans so they can be circumvented by humans. So most endpoint vendors wanted to get better central visibility of what's happening on those endpoints at any given time to figure out what might have made it past your traditional or next-gen AV engine, which is where EDR came into play. So post-incident detection, automated response, locally managed, and it's an emerging requirement, especially when it comes to your cyber insurance. So with that, EDR tools are really only as good as the humans you have managing them. So along came the managed option to help fill a gap in the detect and respond categories within NIST, but they're really expensive, which I'm sure everyone can relate to, that being a huge difficulty when it comes to creating a solid cybersecurity stack. So to talk a little bit more about managed EDR, fully managed EDR solutions are EDR solutions that are managed by a team of experts. You get all those benefits of EDR, but you have that added advantage of having a dedicated team of security professionals who are monitoring it and responding to threats on behalf of your organization.
Okay.
So the reason why these are important, and I understand this graphic looks pretty confusing, and that's the point. There are so many ways that you can be compromised, and not all of these are created equal. There are things that look legitimate that aren't, and there are things that aren't legitimate that look legitimate. And there are so many different flows and ways that a threat actor can initially gain access and then move laterally through your environment. So it's really difficult for one individual to have all of that context and knowledge to understand what's going on. Not to mention, there is always something new, as I mentioned, new strains of malware, new CVEs, and it's really difficult to stay on top of all of that. Plus, if you're just creating detectors that are alerting to, hey, if we see this and then this, I want an alert, you might end up with a whole lot of noise. And
Yep.
that alert fatigue can be exhausting. Sifting through what's legit, what's a false positive, what was just a user doing something silly, that can be really difficult and take that time away from other projects, especially if you don't necessarily have someone just dedicated to security or just dedicated to even looking at EDR alerts.
And can I make a valid point? Can I inject a valid point here?
Please.
People don't know what they don't know. So
Absolutely.
if you're depending on yourself to cover all of these things in the pie, it's it's just not gonna. You're not gonna be as successful.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the old saying goes, multiple eyes are better than one set, right?
Mm-hmm.
Two
Jack
heads
of
are
all
better than one.
trades, master of none.
That's right. And I think a lot of
No.
IT people are like that. IT
Mhm.
people in general, we're very smart people. But at the same time, we don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely. And delegating is important too, but
Mhm.
having someone you trust to delegate to, that's pretty tough. Awesome. And that kind of leads into the question of who should manage your EDR. So you get those kind of two routes, right? You can manage it yourself or within your team, or you
That's right.
can have someone manage it for you. So that comes with a number of questions and constraints: time, money, resources. These are the big three, right? So when you're thinking about, what can my team do? What do we have the time for? What's within our budget? And who could actually be doing it? So thinking about your normal processes of how do you spend money across your security stack? How often are you reevaluating what you need to have? What does that onboarding or adoption process look like? What do you do for recruiting new hires? What does your onboarding process look like? What does your retention look like? Who's dedicated to security within your team? And then how much time is being spent looking at logs? How much time is being spent on maintaining continual education to know what you're looking for? When you adopt a new tool, how long does it take to fully get it off the ground and get someone comfortable working with it? So there are a lot of things that go past just the new shiny objects when you really start to consider, okay, there's a balance between what we want and what we can do. So let's try to make this work within that and find the right place and what realistically what our team has the facilities to do.
Okay.
So talking about self-manage, so there are a lot of great reasons to self-manage your EDR. You can really tailor things to be specific to your organization. So have, specific detection rules. Let's say that, there's something you want to be alerted to or a workflow that you want to have of, if we see this, let's cut that immediately. You can get really specific and granular there. You've also got 24/7. If you have 24/7 expertise, then absolutely self-management is going to be a great option. So, if you've got someone who's able to look at logs 24/7 and is at the top of their game, I would highly recommend self-management. Absolutely. But if you don't, which I would say most people don't, because that is a huge lift to get there, it's worth considering a managed option. So maybe an external 24/7 SOC, or maybe a managed EDR tool. And if you want to be in charge of your agent upgrades and maintenance to agents, then it could be a good option to go self-manage. So if you've got some strict compliance regulations, that would make it really difficult to have a vendor maintain that for you, then self-management is a great option. But things to consider are that continuous learning is a big lift on the individual, and it's going to take up more time than you would hope. It's hard to find security experts, especially, let's say, experts within specific tools even, because every tool has a different workflow. And then you can also have a bit of longer delays to global visibility because you're likely only working with a couple of individuals looking at logs at a time. So talking about external management, going with an externally managed solution is going to reduce alert fatigue, free up time for your IT technicians to work on other things, and you're only alerted to actual incidents. Swift action, so across the board, you're going to be able to see on kind of a global level if multiple things are happening at once. And then that detection engine and analysis is maintained by individuals who are constantly updating, what those detectors are. But it will limit your flexibility and control of the tool, as mentioned before, where you don't get as much of the say of what you want to be what you want those detectors to be. And this is a big one. You have to trust your vendor. If you don't trust your vendor, then there's no point in having it managed by them, because you don't trust the information you're getting. You might end up doubling back over things anyway, and you're paying for them to manage it for you. And then it's a waste of time and money.
And their resources.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, not having trust with your vendor, it's something that people don't consider frequently because, it's just not top of mind. But if you don't trust that your vendor is, always updating things and, making sure that they're doing their due diligence with, quality assurance checks and things like that, then it's going to create either a big issue in the event that something gets by, or you're going to feel that anxiety kind of persisting and likely creating more work for you in the long run.
And you're going to need to find a new vendor if you don't trust them.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So what is Huntress? We're a managed EDR solution. We're a managed security stack offering a managed EDR solution. We also have a security awareness training and managed antivirus, but today I'm mostly going to be talking about our managed EDR.
Okay.
So how does all of that relate to how the Huntress EDR works? So we've got a lightweight agent that you can deploy really easily via group policy, via your RMM. It's going to collect that information, so process execution data, looking at what executed what, those parent-child processes, and then also looking at some of those persistent footholds as well. And I'm going to talk about the individual features on the next slide. But from there, we've got the detection. So our custom tuned detection to capture that information and then make our team aware of any suspicious activity. From there, the analyst will dig into things and investigate for you. We've got that stream of data, and then they'll be able to contextualize it and make that decision of, okay, is this malicious or is this not malicious? Greatly eliminating the false positive. We had a false positive rate last quarter of something like 0.7%.
Wow, that's great.
It's incredibly important to us to, reduce that alert fatigue and not to, alert you to something that's not critical.
So you did say 0.7, so that's not even 1%.
That's correct. Yes.
That's really good. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And we also have a really highly rated support team. So they're absolutely incredible. And in the event that there's something that you want additional information regarding, need help, they're awesome as well and get really high marks across the board when it comes to customer service. So excellent. I wanted to shout them out there as well. But from that investigation, we'll create an incident report, which is the deliverable to you that lets you know the findings and outlines the steps. And as I mentioned, can be delivered via email or ticketing system. Within that incident report, it's also going to give remediation steps of exactly what needs to be done in order to kill that process, get rid of that foothold. And you can even auto remediate by tasking the agent to perform those steps for you and then perform a reboot. From there, all of that info is getting fed back into our platform where our detection engineers continue to look for new detectors so that we can more quickly and efficiently be able to investigate and become more effective.
Yeah, I like that you ended there with basically saying that we feed that intel back into our platform. So
Absolutely.
that's excellent.
Absolutely. Yeah, if one of our analysts is performing an investigation and notices something suspicious that maybe happened a little bit earlier in the attack chain,
Sure.
so that next time we could be more efficient, that's something that we're going to continue to look at and research.
Excellent.
So how do we do managed EDR? We've got that endpoint visibility, those process events, so what executed what, the actual lineage of those events, those persistent footholds. So as I mentioned, those are once an attacker gains access, they're going to plant something so that if the user logs off, the computer gets restarted, they don't have to like re-phish someone to get access back into that host. So what they do oftentimes is put a foothold in something like a registry run key so that upon startup, they're maintaining access. So those are things that Huntress is looking at. And that was actually originally our bread and butter, was just persistence, because nobody else was looking at it. And we've expanded greatly from there, as I'm sure you can see, but
Sure.
that was the kind of OG Huntress. We've also got our external recon feature, which is a tie-in with Shodan, essentially using the external IP address that each agent is communicating to Huntress from, shooting that into Shodan, which tells us any external ports open on that endpoint. We also pull in as an additional stream of information events from your antivirus if you're using Microsoft Defender. So about 800,000 of the 2 million endpoints that we manage use Microsoft Defender. So we have plenty of partners and clients who use other AVs. What I typically say is use whatever you feel comfortable with. But using the built-in free version of Windows Defender is, number one, a great antivirus option that can save you some money. And number two, that information and those detections are being then looked at by the Huntress team as an additional stream of information. And then we've got our canary monitoring. So canaries in the coal mine, they're ransomware canaries is what we call them. So they're files dropped on each host of different file types. And essentially, if there are any changes to that file, that creates a detector that our analysts would then look into to see if that was evidence of something like ransomware. So that's
the
kind
canary.
of yeah.
The canary is really just a file that Huntress drops on to a host to monitor that file and see if there's any changes. Something like ransomware would come in and encrypt that file. Huntress would know because the file would be at that point updated and changed.
Exactly. And so that's kind of that last line of defense. So typically by that point, we'd have seen some process execution information that was suspicious, a foothold, but those canaries, they can allow for earlier detection of ransomware events in order to give the best chance of response.
Okay.
Awesome. And then on the detection side, I've been talking a lot about our detectors and our detection engine that's constantly being updated by our detection engineers and our research and development team. And then our 24/7 threat ops analysts who are actual humans performing that analysis and those investigations. And from there, you have your response. So those incident reports, the deliverable to you by our threat ops team, Within those, you've got those remediation suggestions and our assisted remediation, the easy button that you can hit to tell the agent to do those remediations.
Okay.
And then in a situation where, maybe malware has the ability to propagate through your network, or we see a high fidelity alert, we actually have the ability to isolate the host or multiple hosts, so that it can only communicate with the Huntress portal.
Okay.
So that host isolation is not automated. It means that one of our team members, our analyst, has looked at it, understood that can cause an interruption to day-to-day business activities, and has determined that that's the best course of action in order to protect you and your environment. So we have that ability as well. And then we love to educate through webinars like today, our blog. We're on Reddit. Oftentimes you can find us, talking with the community. We do our Tradecraft Tuesdays once a month where, it's not about Huntress, the product, it's just about things that we've kind of seen out in the wild. So we like to kind of get back to the community in those ways as well.
Yeah, in fact, I am missing Tradecraft Tuesday today. That was one of the I've been a big fan of Tradecraft Tuesday for a long time.
Yeah,
So if members are watching and you have not actually caught an episode of Tradecraft Tuesday with Huntress, be sure to catch one. So it's really interesting.
absolutely. And appreciate the shout out there. I usually tune into those, and some really great information, even as
Yeah,
someone who works at Huntress.
I always seem to learn something.
Absolutely. So yeah, what exactly does it mean to be managed? Means that our threat ops team is monitoring changes to the individual hosts and to the environment as a whole, reviewing those and investigating those outliers, and then investigating, when something has been deemed to be suspicious, and then from there creating an incident report if it's deemed to be malicious. So, for example, on the right-hand side, we see a user run key. One of our analysts started an investigation because of the suspicious auto run. So it was an unclassified persistence mechanism, an unclassified binary, essentially meaning we hadn't seen it before. So from there, Cheryl, this particular analyst, looked at that registry key. It's got a script to extract 2 DLL files and then execute them both. Both of the files are malicious. Those files aren't currently present, but they're still malicious and should be removed. So that's kind of the investigation process that one of our analysts takes. And from here, an incident report would be created and sent out via email or ticketing system. And it would contain the remediation steps of removing that registry key, maybe removing a couple more things, and then to reboot the host as well.
Well, I would assume, Ella, if you guys are managing and maintaining 2,000, well, the security for 2,000 endpoints, there's something always, y'all are always finding something all the time on these
Absolutely.
computers, aren't you?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Never a dull moment.
Exactly. And with 2 million endpoints, it's more important than ever that our process is swift, efficient, while still giving each and every investigation the time that it deserves.
There you go.
So a little bit more about our threat ops team. I really like to highlight them because having strong, capable engineers, we have a really big data set to operate off of. So we can test with real world data to get a higher fidelity of detection, which translates to better detection across all of our partners and clients versus, visibility into a single account or organization's data set. So we always recommend tapping into the talent that Huntress has. So we've gathered the best minds in the cybersecurity industry, people who literally wrote the book on malware analysis. And our clients and partners can access our team of experts who give all of that impressive knowledge from the private sector and the government. So our founders are ex-NSA. And then we've got people from Cisco, VMware, the DoD, the US Coast Guard, Air National Guard. So really diverse minds that help us do what we do best, which is to hunt those hackers down. So
Hunt
we
those
focus
hackers
on,
down.
yeah, we focus on the security so that our partners and clients can focus on their businesses. And we can isolate machines when necessary. So as I mentioned, the situation where something happens at 3 a.m., you don't have to jump out of bed and be like, oh crap, I've got to deal with this right now. You know, if
We're all imagining that too.
yeah, yeah. But if it's necessary, we'll isolate it for you. So even if it happens Friday at 9 p.m., it can wait until Monday at 3 a.m. if need be. Or not 3 a.m., 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because your team has already isolated the host. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is exactly what our dashboard looks like. It's actually not meant to live in. There's not that much to do in it. You know to come in there when you receive one of our incident reports, which will give you the link straight there. And from there, you know, the other things we have in here are, you know, just some overall metrics. You can delve into each of the features a little bit more deeply. You can change settings and access co-branded reports. So this is exactly what this would look like, but I kind of wanted to tell this story a little bit better by going through an entire threat ops investigation from start to finish.
Yeah, sounds great.
So what we see here, so to set the stage, RMMs like Screen Connect, AnyDesk, Atera, TeamViewer, they're all legitimate tools for system admins to facilitate their work. But they're also dual use tools that are often deployed by threat actors for malicious campaigns as well. So we need to ensure that our analysts are alerting to the latter malice, not the former authorized activity. So detections for these rogue RMMs are really specific. It relies on the actual analyst, the investigator, to determine what exactly is going on. So what we see here in this little image is a process execution that came in as a low detection, so low severity, low priority, that's related to Screen Connect. So on the right-hand side, we can see that process execution tree of we see Screen Connect here. We can see the executable, where exactly it's located. And so here, via the process insights information, we can see this executable from the user's download folder was the parent process for this install, which was evidence for foul play and likely some kind of social engineering to trick the user into executing the installer. So it says like support.client, and then the Screen Connect installs and executes. There's an additional piece of information that we can see here, which is the domain that Screen Connect is communicating back to, which is crispy.vip. Which is not, yeah, it is pretty funny, but it's not legitimate, in case that you know, was confusing. So it's definitely an anomaly. This means that this Screen Connect session was reporting back to an adversary at crispy.vip, who could then issue commands to control this machine. So our threat ops teams, our detection engineers, and our threat hunters maintain an internal threat intelligence record, and this domain actually matched with it. And we can see then on the right, this is exactly what one of our reports looks like. So we give some information as to what exactly we saw, you know, any additional information we've had. And then you can see our remediation instructions, which say remove the files from the downloads folder, remove the Screen Connect file from the user's temp folder. And it's even more specific than this. We'll actually give the entire file path to remove it. And then you'll have that assisted remediation that will task it and remove it for you. But I like this alert because this report was given with a critical severity. So even though that initial detector was that low severity, that detector was then qualified and extended by our human team who gathered information and put together that threat intelligence and intrusion evidence into conversation with one another to produce something of value for our partners and clients of a true positive and something that is of that critical severity. So I really like this example because it shows that, that one-off individual, if we go back, process execution, might on an EDR trigger, as we see here, something like a low severity alert. And then it's up to whoever is managing that to make a determination of, is this legit? Is this not legit? Which is especially hard when it's coming from a tool that is widely used, something like Screen Connect. It's so easy to write that off and say, we use Screen Connect, so
we know what it is.
this
It's
is
legit.
fine.
Yeah,
exactly. And nobody's at fault for saying that, especially when you're completely flooded with alerts coming in. You don't have the time to give each and every one 10, 15, 20 minutes of an additional investigation in order to make the determination of, oh yeah, this was nothing anyway. So
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, kind of went over these different, what is EDR, how should it be managed, and how does Huntress fit into that landscape? And Scott, was there anything that you had questions about that I could kind of touch on?
No, I applaud you. You answered all my questions as we went. You did a great job. That's fabulous. I didn't realize Huntress did all that. I know Huntress did a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
I know it's superior value, but I just was not aware of all that. So thank you for taking the
Of
time
course.
to go over that. So I want to ask you another question. Yeah, I'm sure we have members. We've had several members watching our live stream here. Um, what about if we've got some members who have not taken the step yet and decided to move forward with Huntress? What's the best way that they can get started and go ahead and deploy this in their MSP or their
Yeah.
IT business?
Sure. So this is probably the easiest way.
Okay,
We do free trials, no credit card necessary. You can deploy really quickly and you get an unlimited number of endpoints to deploy to. So if you go to huntress.com/trial, you can fill out the info and immediately get started with the free trial. We will actually send you incident reports if we detect something. So I recommend just going for it on a trial. If you want more info before then, feel free to check out our website. And then as well, we're starting a weekly demo series that you can access. Here, I have that link before I pivot back, huntress.com/live-demo.
okay.
The first installment of this series is actually tomorrow. So you can sign up for that if you're, wanting some extra info before taking the leap to actually do a trial. Even though trials are super low stakes, it's what I recommend. If you want to see things completely in action and in your own environment, it can be kind of
Sure.
like an audit as well. But yeah, these are both great options to check out.
Awesome. Well, Ella, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to
Yeah,
be a guest and go over the Huntress platform in detail with our members. And we'll have to do this again.
I know. Well, thank you so much for the time, Scott. I really appreciate it. And um, all of the members of the IT business owners group, I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any particular questions for me, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect there as well.
Awesome. Ella, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.